Hi, I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts. I'll be your host today for our webinar on the Ministry Design Process, Visioneering Director. We want you to understand from the outset, and for some of you that have been watching our webinars, this is a reminder to you that the Ministry Design Process has 4 phases in it. The discovery phase is dealing with the identification of your ministry's core values. It is defining your mission, and then discovering your vision, God's vision for your ministry. The design phase is where you create a strategy, a game plan, a ministry plan for fulfilling your mission so that you can reach your destination, God's vision for your ministry, so that you can fulfill the Great Commission, your calling as a church, in an orderly fashion. And so it deals with your effectiveness and your efficiency, so that your congregation can reach their full potential in partnering with God. Then there is the delivery phase. The delivery phase is where you implement your game plan, your strategic plan. And direction is where you manage and monitor the implementation of your plan as you perform it, as you carry it out week to week and month to month and year to year, that you are monitoring and managing it to make any necessary adjustments to it as you go through your process, as you carry out your plan. Today we're going to deal with the discovery phase. The discovery phase that we're going to deal with today is who is leading the visioneering process. In our building of our ministry design, there is a foundation of core values, the things that are non-negotiable and are essential, the priorities of your ministries, the things that you have conviction about and believe in the most, the things that you cannot do without, or if you remove them, you would stop being your congregation and stop being your church. At the foundation of your ministry design are your values, because they are driving the things that are built upon it. Your mission, your vision, and your strategic planning. We're dealing in these 5 or 6 webinars on vision and visioneering is built upon the work that we've done in teaching and explaining the mission of the church. Let me give you an overview. We've talked about the definition of vision, the description of vision, the distinctions, what it is and what it is not. What makes vision distinct? For instance, businesses, people who don't know the Lord and are working in a business or a nonprofit organization, can come up with a vision that is a dream that they activate and fulfill. But the distinction between what we do as believers as a church and someone might do in their commercial business or retail business or industrial efforts or adventures is that we are discovering God's vision for our work. We're trying to discern and determine His mind on the matter. Well, that's the distinction. Not just between vision and mission, and vision and values, and vision and planning. And so we talked about those things. Then derivatives. What are you going to get as a return on your investment by going through the visioneering process? Well, the power and the importance is discussed about the derivatives of visioneering. What are you going to get? What's it going to do? How is it going to benefit and reward you and your ministry for going through that process? And today we're going to talk about the directors of the visioneering process. And so as you look at leading your church through a visioneering process to design your ministry so that it can meet the challenges of today and tomorrow, so that it can fully obey and partner and align themselves with God and His mind on your ministry, who is going to lead the visioneering process? Someone's got to take the bull by the horns. So who is going to lead it? Secondly, who's going to birth the vision? Somebody's got to discover it and develop it, design it, and then engage people in delivering it and implementing it. But who's going to birth that vision and, of course, rear it? Who will determine the need for the process? Somebody's got to be there to evaluate your ministry and decide, hey, It's time for us to revisit this, or maybe to revisit it for the first time. Someone's got to determine the need. Someone's got to take the initiative. You know, pastors, leadership is not sitting in a room just waiting for someone on your leadership, on your board, your deacons, your elders, however you've put it together, for one of them to come up and tell you what to do as the leader. Someone's got to initiate the process. Somebody's got to lead. Well, who is going to do that? Who will design the process? Someone's got to know where you're going and serve as the navigator for this. And that means you've got to know what steps and in what order and what's required of each step. Think of the visioneering process as a part of the ministry design process as any other program or project that you do as a church. Your children's ministry, you know who the personnel is going to be and where the place you're going to do it in and the cost of it and what the program, the procedures and policies that guide it and direct it day in and day out. You wouldn't have a program like that and not have a design for it. So who's going to design the process pathway? Who will evaluate people, enlist them, equip them, educate them, and equip them, and then engage them, those that will be involved in the process? Who's going to lead them? Well, someone's got to take the bull by the horns to say, we're not going to do this by ourselves. If we want, if we want the congregation to buy into this whole process and to take ownership of God's vision for your ministry, somebody's got to get them involved. Who will be responsible for the process? Who will be ultimately responsible for the product, what you produce from your visioneering process? Who will preserve and protect the product? So from start to finish, who's going to lead this and then take ownership of it to protect it and preserve it and provide for it in the coming years? Well, the answer to that is the leader or leaders of your ministry will do these things. So you have some preliminary questions to answer as you start looking at the visioneering process. Is how are you going to lead this? Well, first off, you've got to answer the question about the structure of your personnel. You've got to settle your theology of leadership. Are you going to use a single leader? You know, when you look at 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3, you see that God the Father is the head of Christ. When you look at 1 Corinthians 3, verse 23, and chapter 15, verse 28, you see again the idea of a leader of leaders. So someone's got to be the leader. But that's my thinking. You've got to settle this within the framework of your theology of leadership. Is it one guy doing all the work and doing all the talking and making all the decisions? Or is it a group of leaders? Is there a leader of leaders? How are you going to structure it? Because your theology of leadership determines your methodology. It determines your methodology. It determines the people that will be involved and their place in the process. So how are you going to structure the personnel of your visioneering process? You can use a team, but there probably should be a leader of leaders from what I understand of Scripture, but how you're put together. So you've got to step back here and you've got to look at Scripture. You've got to be able to explain it, and it's got to be practical. It's got to work. You've got to look at what your church's practice, you look at your constitution, your policy manuals, the procedures you've used, your former practice and the history of your church. But you've got to know the answer to this unequivocally. How are you going to structure this process with the people that are going to be involved in it? Are you going to have just one single leader? Or are you going to lead by a team or a committee? The primary leader is not responsible for discovering the vision alone, but he is responsible for guiding the process and developing his team. So let me encourage you, as a general rule, Pastor, you're the leader of leaders, and this is resting on your shoulders. And while you want to pull around you people to complete the team, to make you a strong team, and you have all the scriptural analogies, comparisons, and teachings about the body of Christ. Not everyone is a hand or a foot or a knee or a head or a nose or a mouth or an ear. And so you assemble a team and structure them in a way that allows you to succeed. Give yourself the best opportunity to exceed at this by putting together the right team. The second question that you preliminarily have to answer before you go activate this and try and put this together is the structure of your process. So you've got to know the steps that you're going to follow. And then their order. Are you going to be able to do 6 things at one time, 6 steps, and they're done together as step 1, and then step 2? So it doesn't have to be 1 through 64. It can be 1 through 6 is done together, 7 through 18 is done together, 19 through 23 is done together, and so forth. And I'm not saying that there's that many steps in it, but somebody's got to know where you're going, guys. Somebody's got to know what the next step is. Not do like I've done when I've gone and worked for a national church builder some years ago. And I went to the vice president of operations and asked them, what are our next steps here? I'm trying to help this church get ready to build. What are the next steps? And he looked at me and said, you know, I don't know. Well, we had to go find out together in that particular situation what the steps were. I'm telling you, from 30 years experience, it will help you immensely if you can structure and fully understand why you're putting together the personnel and the process so that you'll have the steps and know where you're going. Be a leader. Figure this thing out. A leader doesn't find a parade and get in front of it. He forms the parade, puts it together, and assembles a team, and decides the path that you're going to go, and what the steps in it are, and what street you're going to go to. And so be a leader. Don't just jump in front of the parade and call yourself the leader. Start it from scratch. Determine you need to do this, initiate the process, and develop the personnel and the pathway to lead your church through the visioneering process. Let me talk to you about the characteristics of a visionary leader. First are people types. In dealing with the people types, there are normally are 2. There's the sensing people, and there's intuitive people. This is dealing with how people perceive or acquire information. It's how we do it. You're predominantly one or the other. You're one or the other. So both are used by people, but usually one or the other is a person's preference. Isabel Myler believes people are born with a preference, and while possible to change, it's very difficult. There's the Myler-Briggs that deals with telling whether you're sensing or intuitive. But let me tell you this, both I believe are necessary for a ministry, for your church to succeed and survive and thrive. They are not good or bad. Both type gifts and people fit into God's economy. But as a leader, it is wise for you to identify this. And so the Myler-Briggs type indicator and Isabel Myers estimated that 75% of the population in North America prefer the sensing process, and 25% of the people prefer the intuitive process. So how do you know which one you are? And I'm going to explain these 2 types here in a moment, but how do you know which type person you predominantly are? Well, you can go through a self-diagnosis or have your spouse diagnose you, or a close friend, a staff member diagnose you. You can take the Myler-Briggs type indicator temperament test. You can use a shorter one, a shorter version of this, the Kersey temperament sorter. Or you can refer to any of the visionary audits done. Aubrey Malphurs, and he wrote a very good book on developing your vision for ministry in the 21st century, and he gives a visionary audit in Appendix A on page 197 through 198, and he takes you through just a list of questions. Now, I'm providing with this webinar a support document where I've just made up one of these and followed what others have said. It's not original with me. For you to grade it and test yourself to determine whether you're a sensing person or an intuitive person. So let's talk about this. What is a sensing person? What are we talking about? A sensing person uses all 5 senses: touch, taste, sound, your hearing, sight, and smell to discern things. They've been defined as a practical realist. They're common sense people who focus on the present reality of what they can prove. A scientist would be a person who says, if you don't have the proof and the facts and the evidence, don't talk to me about theory. They want to be able to feel it, touch it, hear it, taste it, and see it. 75% of our country is made up of people who are predominantly that way. That's the way they came out of the womb. And there are people who have been able to carry out and manage and make things happen and help people reach their full potential and, you know, deal with efficiency and effectiveness of organizations. And there are 75%, I guess, of our churches are made up of sensing people, and maybe the leaders are that kind of person, that type of person. Then there is the intuitive person. This refers, they prefer to use their 6th sense. Ideas, relationships, and possibilities, they seem to flash out of nowhere for these people. They are future-oriented and think not so much in what is, but in what could be. They're big picture people, not detailed people, focused on the now. In other words, the Marthas, Mary and Martha, the Martha of the worlds that are focused on the work at hand, and they're missing the bigger picture of Christ sitting at their feet and what he wanted them to get from spending time with him. They were sitting at God's feet. And she was worried about getting together the meal and being a good host. By the way, there's nothing wrong with being a good host. The Bible says leaders, pastors, are to be given to hospitality. So however you exegete that part of Scripture, it is the thought of giving care to your guest requires detail. So that it's not wrong. Neither one of these are wrong. It's just helpful for us to identify really how we're put together so we'll know how to lead, and it will make a difference in how you do the visioneering process. So these are big picture people, not detailed people, focused on the now. They are excited by the possibility of what could be. Folks, it's probably why some guys go to plant a church and another guy goes to take a maintenance church. Not all the time. I'm just trying to help you start thinking through this and to go study this. So you've got a sensing person who struggles to see vision, to see the future. And you've got an intuitive person who naturally, in the way he is put together, sees a vision. He can't really explain why he sees it. He has a mental image that comes naturally to that kind of person. 25% of our people in our country, they're intuitive. So what does this mean for the sensing pastor that would lead his church through the visioneering process? He is struggling because he doesn't have a natural tendency toward this. Can a sensing person discover God's vision? And the answer is yes. But normally it is through their natural senses, not intuition. And so a sensing person might catch the vision by their senses. And that can happen. Let me encourage you. But But an intuitive person sees it when there's no evidence of it. They just see it. It's a sixth sense. It's not by their touch, taste, feel, sight, and hearing. So what does a sensing person do? Well, it has to be more visible, apparent to the naked eye, not the mind's eye, but the naked eye. They have to be able to see it physically. They have to be shown what you're talking about. If your vision is similar, if God's vision for your work is similar to another church's, you may be able to take yourself and your team who are struggling with this to see a church, to show them what it looks like as it has grown up. And so as you do this, you may go look at, I'm not telling you to borrow their vision. I'm saying to use some wisdom here so you can physically show them with their five senses what you're talking about when you're talking about discovering a vision and explaining to them what a vision is. This way, they may be able to catch and then communicate a vision. So what is a sensing person to do about this situation where you're the leader of the church or one of the key leaders of the church and you're working together as a team to discover God's vision for your ministry? What are you to do about this when maybe all five of you or three of you are a sensing type person? Well, first off, you have to work harder maybe to develop intuition. Secondly, borrow the abilities of an intuitive person. Ask them what they see. So go recruit some more people out of your ministry or someone else outside your body who you greatly respect and maybe has a history of being able to sense God's will and vision for ministries, organizations. So you borrow their ability. You surround yourself with them. You're asking someone in bringing them in to provide the sixth sense. Just look at it that way. Become the support person instead of the lead person in this part of the process. Use it as an opportunity to grow yourself and your team and your church, because it is a difficulty. I'm going to tell you, in coaching guys through this process, it is very common for me to have a pastor tell me face-to-face or over the phone by Skype in writing to say, Marshall, I just can't do this. I just can't see it. It's because they catch it with their senses, not with their sixth sense, with their intuition. They're at a disadvantage. And so an intuitive person naturally sees the vision in their head. Now, let me tell you, Bill Hybels says when the church needs a compelling, energizing, energetic vision from God, it goes to its leaders to lead them to that. And so whether you're listening to me right now and you're sitting in front of your computer screen and you're going through this, you have got to stop and deal with the fact that part of us are sensing and part of us are intuitive. Deal with it. Go to the Lord and pray. Study through this. Talk to other pastors to find out how God would have you to handle this. Another characteristic about visionary leaders is not only understanding whether you're sensing or intuitive, including your team, if you're going to use that structure, is they are information gatherers. Information gathering, they have the ability, visionary leaders do, to recognize, collect, and synthesize pertinent information from a variety of sources. They are great information collectors. Jay Conger in The Charismatic Leader and Aubrey Malvers talks about this in the book Developing Your Vision for Your Ministry in the 21st Century. Jay Conger says this: they used multiple and often apparently unrelated sources of information to assimilate information from a lot of different disciplines all at one time. The common trait of people who supposedly have vision is that they spend a lot of time reading and gathering information and then synthesize it until they come up with an idea. Aubrey also mentions a book, The Leadership Challenge, by two authors. They say intuition is the result of bringing together knowledge and experience. The knowledge is from hands-on experience, not just classroom setting. So, takeaways from this. Learn from the stored knowledge you have gained by your experience in life, ministry, in the marketplace. And if you're brand spanking new at this, and you've come in and taken a church, or you're starting a church, go learn from the experience of someone else. Go talk to them. What these men are saying is two things. A visionary leader gathers information both from books and from their own experience and from the experience of others. It's not just head knowledge, but hand and feet knowledge, where they have experienced it. So they read, listen, and absorb information carefully, correctly, and quickly, so their mind has an opportunity to digest all the information from multiple sources and then make great use of it. They blend the intuition and gather data collection. They do all that together. So they're going to blend whatever amount of themselves is intuitive and collect the data together in order to come up with a great idea. So what is the conduct of a visioneering leader? We've talked about his characteristics. Identify your type, and then guys, go collect all the information you can from all the different sources and synthesize it together. I mean, you blend it and boil it together like a soup, and you're putting all kinds of things in the stew. And while you're doing that, there's an aroma that comes up out of it that you can smell it, then you can feel the texture, then you taste it, then it gives nourishment and satisfaction and fills you up, and then it's burnt off by your body to do you good. Look at all this information as fuel, food, to fuel your body, your church, your body of believers, your ecclesia. You're gathered out, you're called out, that are going to do this. Use the information. So whether you're a sensing person, intuitive, or a blend of that, you need to go and gather the information and boil it together, weave it together to produce an idea. There are people who make good use of this. That means they have to read outside their sermon preparation. What is the conduct of a visioneering leader? First off, they're vision casters. They're vision casters. They're able to cast vision. They're cultivators. A cultivator, a vision cultivator, initiates the church's unique vision. He challenges the church to discover God's vision for their ministry. Somebody has got to take risk in your church and lead the way. And this can be a very difficult thing. If you're in a small church, and I frame a small church as being under 200 people, a medium-sized church being 200 to 400, some have said 200 to 500 people, a large church is being 400 to 500 and up, and mega church being over 1,000, 1,500. These are just frameworks that consultants and leaders have put together in trying to help churches, and so they talk about it. But each one of these have characteristics that you can pretty well follow in the science of church organizations. If you're in a small church with under 200 people, it is very likely that you have a matriarch or patriarch or a family or a gathering of related people who are primary components or lead person in your ministry. And just because you hold the office of pastor doesn't mean you're the key person in the church that leads. And so you may have to take some real courage here to cultivate, to be a cultivator, so that you are going to initiate and develop the church's unique vision. Somebody's got to cultivate the process and to care for it as you go. Okay, so somebody's got to lead that process, initiate it, determine it's needed, initiate it, and then babysit it, care for it all the way through. And that can be hard when you have the position of pastor, but you've got key influencers who maybe they don't lead so much as they can nix anything that you want to do. They can stop something by happening. Nothing happens in small churches often when a patriarch, matriarch, or a family is there and they say no to it. They oppose it. I've been there. I pastored a small church and a medium-sized church and then a large church. You have that situation. Here's the second conduct of a visioneering leader. As a vision caster, he is also the communicator. So if you're going to lead your church through this process, you're probably going to have to determine it's needed, initiate it, convince other leaders to do it, to help you lead it, formulate a pathway, put together the personnel, the people who are going to carry it out, and lead your church by communication to buy into it so they're involved in the process and then take ownership of it. Excuse me. And so as you look at this, someone's got to communicate. He is the primary caster of the vision. He is the secondary caster through others. He regularly communicates the vision to the church and others to keep it before them. So it's not just during the visioneering that you're doing this. It's also after it is cast and you've implemented it, and now you're managing that plan and that vision to make certain that it is protected and preserved and provided for and cared for. And somebody, by the way, has got to determine when it's fulfilled. And it's time to pursue God to discover his next vision for your ministry. But a visionary leader and a visioneering leader is a vision caster who cultivates it and then communicates it. And then they're a clarifier. Now listen to this. A visioneering leader is going to rethink and refine the vision. He's going to perfect it and mature it. Think of James chapter 1 where he says, brethren, count it all joy when you fall into different testing times, tribulation, that God means it for his glory and for our good, that he wants to give us endurance, to make us endure. So we build up our endurance like a long-distance runner, but he also wants to mature us. He wants to make us entire, complete, lacking nothing, having all the components there. Well, when you think of leading your church through this process, you want to be a clarifier who is rethinking and refining the vision so that you are building its perfection, its maturity. You want it to be complete, entire, lacking nothing. So he revisits and rephrases the vision to express it in fresh ways, in fresh terms. You don't want your vision to get out of people's heads, nor do you want it to grow stale, like stale bread on a cabinet in your kitchen or on your pantry shelf. He helps others comprehend the vision. So he's clarifying it. You want to test people to see if they understand what is God's vision. So you're speaking here. You're Aaron speaking. And you've got to lead and do this so that other people will know how to couch the terms and the concepts of God's vision for your ministry so they know how to talk about it. You want to help people understand it and perceive it in the right way so they can get energized about it, take ownership of it, and go convince others, hey, this is a good thing. We're partnering with God in this. And he is up to great things, and we get to join him. It's a privilege. Hey, how about coming and helping? The average church today has 20% of its congregation actively involved in its ministry. That tells me right away that we have a lot of ministries with no vision, and no visioneering leader and visionary leader who is clarifying in the minds of God's people what God's vision is for them. If you have a healthy church, that's going to go closer to 45% of your people actively involved. If you want a church that is fit, it's move it towards 65. Now, those are just numbers that I'm giving you that others have talked about that I believe are good goals for us to set. But why don't you just take a break here and go really count up how many are involved and determine if you're unhealthy, healthy, or fit. And then devise ways for dealing with it. We're looking at providing webinars to help you look at ways to do this, to give you principles and precepts that you can follow to Increase the percentage of people in your church who are stewarding their opportunities, who are stewarding the things that are entrusted to them. A clarifier is helping other people comprehend it. He helps others find their role in the vision, both the visioneering process, the design, and the ministry. So you're helping people find their place. This is what a visioneering leader does. Somewhere down the road, the vision will be changed, adjusted, amended, or replaced, and you as the leader will lead this process as well. Now, it may go way past your lifetime or your involvement with that particular church that you're with. But here is the conduct of one. Now let's move to the next thing, and that is the character of a visioneering leader. You can look at this and say, well, it could be characteristic and conduct, but just grab a hold of this. Andy Stanley, in the book Visioneering, he writes about this and talks about Nehemiah. And he said Nehemiah prayed. The first characteristic of him, or first character or conduct of him, was that he prayed. His character was that he prayed. The first thing you see him praying for is for an opportunity. For an opportunity. It is interesting to note that Nehemiah never prayed for God to rebuild the wall. What he prays for is an opportunity to go rebuild the wall himself. That is the difference between a dreamer and a visionary. Dreamers dream about things being different. Visionaries envision themselves making a difference. Dreamers think about how nice it would be for something to be done. Visionaries look for an opportunity to do something, and they know the first place they go when they see a need is to God. A visionary looks for an opportunity to work alongside God. If you've been wondering how to understand and explain to your other leaders and your people the difference between a dream and a vision, is that the dreamers just hoping the process or problem is solved, or a better future is reached, is accomplished, is achieved. They want things to be better, but a visionary, they go to do something about it. The second thing that Nehemiah prayed about, that Andy talks about in his book, is that he says Nehemiah prayed for favor. He asked the king to take an interest in the broken walls of his homeland and to support it and to give him permission and to give him a title and to provide the finances, which leads to the second thing that Nehemiah did. As you look at the book of Nehemiah and the life of Nehemiah in his going to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, the second thing a visionary leader has as his character, it's a part of who he is. It's in his very fiber, because out of your character comes your conduct, your creativity, what you hope to accomplish. It's coming out of our character. It's formed over a lifetime. Nehemiah not only prayed for an opportunity and for favor, Nehemiah also planned ahead. He developed a strategic plan for carrying out his vision. Even before the vision was developed, he organized the steps necessary to start. He had a clear pathway to accomplish the vision. And so here are the things that he was doing. Guys, when you come up against something and you're looking at this and you feel like there's a problem that needs to be solved, our church needs to be addressing it, God's got a vision for it, and we need to carry it out, don't wait around. Go plan ahead so that you're ready. I've used the terminology getting ready for God's harvest of souls. And if you've been praying for people to get saved, then plan and put that plan into action to get your church family, your ministry, your personnel and programs, and your place of ministry ready for that harvest of souls. Build your ark before it rains. Okay. Here's what he planned. He had to plan ahead about how to ask for a leave of absence. He had to leave his post. He was in the wrong place doing the wrong thing with the wrong guy, and he looked at that and couldn't say, here's an obstacle. I can't do anything about the walls being broken down. I'm in the wrong place. I'm serving the king and under bondage to him. And, and he's not a guy who's going to be in favor of doing this. So he had to ask for a leave of absence. Then he had to ask for the king to pay for it. So he had to figure out how to get financial support. Then he had to have permission and documents to travel from where he was to Jerusalem. And he had to have documents that gave him authority to have the resources and the personnel. So he walks in and shows them his papers, and they say, it's at your disposal. One of my family members, my wife's family, worked in the military. And it's a mystery to us today exactly what it did because it's classified. But we did know at one time he walked in with paperwork, flew in by helicopter onto a base, walked to the commander of the base, handed him the papers. And the commander of that base looked at my wife's uncles and said, you have full control of the base. Everything is at your disposal. What would you have us do? That's what Nehemiah needed to make this happen. He had to be able to walk in and all the way through, get permission to get there, and then have full control of everything he needed to make this happen. Then he had to acquire the materials to rebuild the wall. He had to request a title. He asked to be the governor of Judah. He had to work and organize and equip the locals for labor. He had to recruit the labor force to convince them to leave what they were doing in their fields and in their businesses and to come build this wall. He had to cast a vision for what was happening here. And he is doing this ahead of time, how he was going to make this happen. Then he had to begin construction. He had to implement the plan. He is thinking ahead. Guys, you need to be doing the same thing. Then Nehemiah prepared ahead. He got ready ahead of time. Our faith in God's vision for our ministry is exhibited by our prayers, our planning, and our preparation. And then Nehemiah positioned himself. God put the players in place ahead of time. Remember, we are discovering, developing, and deploying God's vision for our ministry, not our vision, God's vision. If you want to be a part of something grand, something lasting, then join God in his work in your church. He has a vision for you and for your ministry. Go find out what it is. So here's the rule. What God originates, he orchestrates. Find out what is God's vision and plan for carrying out that vision. Prepare yourself for it and position yourself, understanding that God has put the players in place. Have eyes to see. Have eyes to see. Get God's perspective. Ask God to open your eyes so you can identify everything that is happening around you, that God has put into place. Position yourself with God. And so Nehemiah trusted God. He put his confidence in God. He exercised his faith in God. He was persuaded by God. And he proved God's trustworthiness by putting himself in a position to work with God and to be used by God. So don't be afraid to trust the dependable one. This is not you going out and striking out on your own. This is you partnering with God. So all of this visioneering process, from start to finish, is not about our competency. It's not about our character. It's not about our conduct. It's not all about us. While those things are important, and I'm emphasizing them, this is about God and his will for your life and your people's lives. This is about a spiritual journey of having to connect with God, hear God, understand God's plan and the people, the personnel, and the process that he'd have you to follow. But you can't do that unless you pray, plan, prepare, and position yourself. So as you look at this, are you up to it? What about a team of people that you can assemble? Are they going to be up to it? What cultivating do you need to do from the pulpit and in your counseling and in your discipleship work with your leaders? What work do you need to do to get your church ready to embark on a visioneering process? Well, the first place you better go is to God. And you better get on your knees and alone with him. And then you better recruit and invite some others to join you. And you guys better start praying about the condition and situation of your church and clearly ask God to show you with clarity his vision, his will. What problem are you going to solve? What I'm teaching here can be applied both to the overall ministry of your church or to something that God wants you to attack in your church or group of people in your church. A problem you want to solve, a solution you need to provide, a need you need to meet. But you've got to do these things. And so let's talk the last thing here about the characteristics of a visionary team. If you're going to assemble a team, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5, and more, and you're going to structure it as they're each involved in this process and determine who, when, where, and how they're going to be involved in it. Here are some things that you need to look at concerning the characteristics and the conduct of the team that you join. They better be visionaries. So here's the first thing. You want people who are going to commit. You want them to commit to what God is doing. You want them to commit to God and to you and to the process. You want people who will keep going when the going gets tough. They stay at it. If you got people who easily are discouraged and defeated and they quit with their kids and their marriage and their job and at church, those probably aren't the people you want to put in here unless you've had time to see them grow and develop and build and they've shown character. They've got to be committed to this. This is not easy. You are going to be opposed at every turn. You're going to have walls in front of you that you're dead certain is a wall that you cannot penetrate, dig under, scaffold over, or walk around. You've got to realize that wall is not a wall. It's the front of the next step in God's journey, stairway, toward his vision and seeing it implemented in your ministry to accomplish what God wants to accomplish. Pick people of commitment. Secondly, cooperation. They better be team players. They better be fit and styled together. I would test your people. You can use a temperament test that we've already mentioned here, the Myers-Briggs one. You can use placeministries.org or assessme.org, and I mentioned these in our other webinars. You can use these tests. You can use a personality disc profile, any number of ones, to begin identifying how your people are put together in their personality type, what shape they take, and everything, their spiritual gifts, their heart, their passion, their abilities, their personality, and their experience. But they better be people who cooperate together. If they don't show they have the ability to work with the group that you're putting together or thinking about putting together as you assemble your team, your leadership team, if they can't cooperate, don't use them. They're not ready. They better be willing and able to work with others. Cooperation is key. Aubrey Malphurs also talks about it, and this comes out of his developing a ministry for, or vision for your ministry in the 21st century. He talks about contribution. They better have some ability and competency and gifts, talents, both nature and nurture, spiritual and natural, to contribute. They've got to be able to contribute to the process. They can't be just good people who cooperate and committed. They better be the people who are talented. And you want to draw in the best people, the right people, that can contribute to your team. And then there are those who they're going to champion the cause. They're going to be ones who are championing your cause. the whole process. They're going to tell others about it. They're going to sell it. They're going to convince others. They're going to speak well of it. You ever been to, a restaurant and you had a meal and you just went out as a champion of that restaurant, the service you got, the environment there, the atmosphere, the price, and the food? Can you remember where you bit into the best hamburger you've ever eaten in your life, that had the greatest impact, the best setting, so forth and so on, and you'd go tell people, if you want a great hamburger, go here. They better be able to champion the cause, champion the visioneering process, champion what God is doing. They better be ones who are totally committed in championing what is going on. So they contribute, they cooperate, they're committed for the long haul, and they're a salesperson who goes and just talks about what's happening. And then they better be communicators, communication, so they can talk to other people. They better be able to sell it and communicate it in different ways so people buy into it and are convinced. Because remember, I said at the outset of this that we're guessing, and the researchers say about 75% of people in our country are a sensing type person with their five senses, not intuitive with their sixth sense. So a communicator has got to be able to show it to people so they can catch it with their five senses. Because at some point, their emotions and their spiritual emotions are going to catch a hold of the vision, and they're going to see it as God sees it, and they're going to see God, but you need communicators to help you do this. The visioneering personnel, the directors, the leaders, had better have the right thinking, a good creed, a biblical creed. Better have your thinking in line. Your character better be proven and ready, your characteristics and conduct, so that you can accomplish what God has called you to. One of the key things for both profit and nonprofit organizations, for church and other type parachurch organizations, ministries, one of the key things at the top of the list that anybody talks about with any experience, with any truth, they talk about the importance of vision and the need for people, organizations, to do a visioneering process so they have a vision clarity that is unique to their ministry, to their business, profit, nonprofit, to your church, to your parachurch organization, to help you and lead you toward a better future. You got to know where you're going, a destination. It's key. So, who's going to lead it? How are you going to answer those questions at the front? Well, I'm Marshall Shannon, a ministry design coach with ministry design training and ministry design concepts. You can reach me here at this address or reach me at either one of these phone numbers. I trust the Lord's blessing upon you as you move ahead, that God would honor your efforts, and you may have to start at this several times in order to accomplish it. But may God give you perseverance. May He give you His wisdom, and you need to go ask Him for His wisdom.